There used to be a position in football that was the most important on the pitch, and every team in the world was built around it. The number 10. The playmaker, the trequartista, the cam, the quarterback of football. This was the guy who got the ball, whispered something to it, and made magic happen. And for about 50 years, the number 10 was the soul of the sport. But then something happened, and almost overnight, the position just died. Nobody plays as a pure number 10 anymore, not at City, not at Madrid, not at Bayern, not at PSG, and not even at Argentina, where Messi himself, one of the last great 10s, has been turned into a false 9, a winger, a free roamer, anything but an actual 10. So the question is, what happened? How did the most glamorous position in football go from being the position every kid wanted to play to being completely extinct in less than a decade? And the answer involves Pep Guardiola, Cristiano Ronaldo, a tactical revolution that nobody saw coming, and one specific match in 2009 that quietly killed the number 10 forever. So let's get into it. So before we get into the death of the number 10, we need to understand what the position actually was, because if you're under 20 years old, you might not even know what a real number 10 looks like. A number 10 in the classic sense was the link between the midfield and the strikers. He played in the gap behind the centre forward or strike partnership and in front of the two central midfielders. This was called the hole, and the entire team was built to feed him the ball. His job was simple: receive the pass, turn and create everything. That's it. He didn't track back, he didn't press, he didn't tackle. He was the artist and the team played for him. Think about Diego Maradona at Napoli. The entire club was structured around getting Maradona on the ball. Zinedine Zidane at Juventus and at Real Madrid. Same thing. The Galacticos were just a delivery service for Zizou. Francesco Totti at Roma, a one-club legend who played 25 years and never once did anyone ask him to defend. Juan Roman Riquelme at Boca and Villarreal, who played through games at literal walking pace and was still the best player on the pitch. Kaká at Milan, who in his prime years was so good he won a Ballon d'Or over both Messi and Ronaldo. And let's not forget Ronaldinho, Mesut Ozil, Wesley Sneijder, Andres Iniesta, Rivaldo, Alessandro Del Piero, Deco, and even further back the likes of Roberto Baggio, Giorgi Hagi, Rui Costa and Michael Laudrup. Every great team had one, a creative genius wearing the 10 shirt who barely ran and somehow controlled the entire 90 minutes. And for decades, this is just how football worked. You built your team, you found your number 10 and you let him cook. The position was so important that the shirt itself, the actual number 10 jersey, became this sacred thing in football culture. In Argentina, the 10 shirt is treated like a religion. There is a national debate every time someone other than Messi wears it. In Italy, the trequartista was the most romanticized role in the sport. Entire generations of Italian football writers built their careers writing about Roberto Baggio and Alessandro Del Piero, and the magic of the man playing in the hole. And in England, we called him the playmaker, the guy who, quote unquote, sees passes that nobody else sees. Paul Gascoigne in the 90s, Dennis Bergkamp at Arsenal, and Eric Cantona at Manchester United. These guys were treated like wizards, not athletes. The entire culture of football was built around the idea that the 10 was the most important player on the pitch, full stop. The same sentiment was shared at international level, maybe even more so. Look at the 1986 final. Maradona basically wins it on his own as a 10. Look at France at the 1998 World Cup and Euro 2000 with Zinedine Zidane. The 10 was so dominant that for about 30 straight years it was almost impossible to win a major trophy without one. But here's the thing, already by the late 2000s, something was shifting underneath the surface. And most fans didn't notice it yet because the great number 10s were still around. Kaká was still scoring, Riquelme was still walking around, Totti was still in Rome, Sneijder was about to win a treble with Inter. But tactically, the ground was moving, and a few coaches in Spain and Germany were about to detonate the entire idea of what a playmaker is asked to do. And the wild thing is, they did it in plain sight, and almost nobody clocked what was happening until it was already too late. So, the year is 2008 and Pep Guardiola has just been promoted from the Barcelona B team to take over the Barcelona first team. And Pep looks at his squad and he sees something nobody else in football is really seeing yet. He sees Xavi, Iniesta and Messi, and instead of asking which one of these is my number 10, Pep asks a different question. What if I don't need a number 10 at all? What if I just have 3 of them? Or better yet, as close to 11 as possible. What if every player on the pitch is a creator and we just keep the ball forever, and if we lose the ball, squeeze the opposition into a corner, never let them out, and win possession back as quickly as possible? What Pep built that season was tiki-taka. But tiki-taka was actually a Trojan horse for something much bigger. Pep had quietly figured out that the number 10, the guy who stands in the hole and waits for the ball, was actually a luxury that modern football could no longer afford. Because the number 10 didn't press, and pressing was about to become the most important thing in the entire sport. And then on May 2nd, 2009, Barcelona went to the Bernabeu and beat Real Madrid 6-2, and during that match, Pep did something that quietly broke football forever. He played Lionel Messi, who up until that point had been a right winger, he played him as a false 9, a centre forward who isn't actually a centre forward. Messi started in the striker position, but every time Barcelona had the ball, Messi dropped 30 yards deeper into midfield, and what happened was chaos. The Madrid centre-backs didn't know whether to follow him and leave a gap behind them, or stay in position and let him receive the ball in acres of space. They chose wrong both ways. Messi got 2 goals, Henry got 2, Piqué and Puyol added the others, and that match is the moment most tactical historians point to as the death of the traditional 10. Because Pep had just shown the entire footballing world that you didn't need a 10 to create chances, you could just have your striker drop into the 10 space and pull the defence apart. And that one tactical idea spread through football like a virus. Within 3 years, every elite coach in Europe was either copying Pep or trying to figure out how to beat him. And the second part of that equation killed the 10 just as much as the first. Because the original thought was that to beat Pep's Barcelona you needed to press them, otherwise you would never touch the ball, which meant you needed midfielders who could run for 90 minutes. And the romantic creator, who walked around the pitch waiting for the ball to find him, just couldn't survive in that environment anymore. Jose Mourinho set the original blueprint, creating a block so low that Barcelona, sustaining over 70% possession, was the key to beating them in the Champions League semi-finals en route to a treble at Inter. Jurgen Klopp at Dortmund built gegenpressing. The moment you lose the ball, you have 6 seconds to win it back. The entire team hunts in packs, and there is literally no place on the pitch for a guy who doesn't defend. Antonio Conte at Juventus built wing-back systems where every single midfielder had to cover 12 kilometers a game. Diego Simeone at Atletico built a low block that swallowed creative players whole, following a similar path to Mourinho. And, one by one, the greatest number 10s either had to evolve or die, and most of them died. So the first position that quietly absorbed everything the number 10 used to do was the inverted winger. And if you don't know what an inverted winger is, here's the easy version. A left-footed player on the right wing or a right-footed player on the left wing. And the reason this is so devastating is that when the winger gets the ball wide, instead of dribbling towards the byline and crossing it with their stronger foot like a traditional winger would do, they cut inside and shoot, or thread a through ball through the heart of the defence, which is exactly what a number 10 used to do, except now it's happening from a wide starting position, which means the defence has to defend the entire pitch instead of just the central channel. Arjen Robben was the prototype. Bayern Munich won basically every game from 2010 to 2015 by giving Robben the ball on the right and letting him cut inside onto his left foot and curl it into the far corner. Mohamed Salah at Liverpool, the same thing. 200 plus goals from the right wing, almost all of them with his left foot. Vinicius Jr. at Real Madrid, same template. Bukayo Saka at Arsenal. Kvicha Kvaratskhelia at Napoli. Lamine Yamal at Barcelona. This is now the most valuable archetype in football. And notice something, every single one of these players is doing the work the number 10 used to do. They're creating, they're scoring, they're playing the killer pass, except now they're doing it from 30 yards wider, which makes them impossible to mark. Many current number 10s also drift wide and find themselves basically as a support winger, almost in the way that a traditional fullback used to work. Ryan Cherki, Jamal Musiala, Florian Wirtz and Cole Palmer all find themselves drifting out to the weak side to create opportunities, to cut inside onto their stronger foot and shoot or pick out a pass. The second assassin is the false nine, and we already touched on this, but it's worth zooming in, because the false nine didn't just replace the striker, it absorbed the number 10's job description in full. A false nine is technically a centre forward, but they don't actually play as a striker. They drop into the gap between the midfield and the defence, which is exactly where the number 10 used to live. And from that position, they create everything. The 4-1-2-1-2 is the formation that has absolutely been wiped from the face of football. And that is because it is simply the 4-3-3 with a false 9 now. Roberto Firmino at Liverpool from 2017 to 2022 was the engine of one of the greatest attacking teams in Premier League history. And he hardly ever scored tap-ins because he wasn't there to score. He was there to drop deep, create space for Salah and Mane to run into, and play the killer pass. Ousmane Dembele is now doing this at PSG with Desiree Doué and Kvaratskhelia. We saw this for years at Manchester City with Phil Foden, Raheem Sterling and Riyad Mahrez. And crucially, when Messi himself moved from Barcelona to PSG and then to Inter Miami, he stopped being a winger or a 10 and became almost exclusively a deep-lying false 9. The genius of the false 9 is the same thing that made Pep's idea so devastating in the first place. The defenders don't know who to mark. If the centre-back follows the false 9 deep, there is a huge gap behind for the wingers to run into. If the centre-back stays, the false 9 has the entire midfield to himself. Harry Kane is another great example of this, and he is closing in on a 60-goal season. And the third assassin is the box-to-box midfielder, which is the most damning of all, because this is the player who literally took the number 10's job and then added defensive work on top of it, and somehow does both at an elite level. The modern box-to-box midfielder is supposed to score 10+ goals a season, provide 10+ assists, win the ball back, press for 90 minutes, and link the defence to the attack. Which, if you think about it, is just a number 10's job description plus a defensive midfielder's job description glued into one human being. And the reason this archetype became dominant is simple. Modern football demands that every player defend. Another philosophy of Jose Mourinho's, so coaches stopped picking creators who couldn't run and started picking runners who could also create. Kevin De Bruyne is the perfect example. De Bruyne is one of the most creative players the game has ever seen. He would have been a classic number 10 if he was born in 1985. But because he was born in 1991, playing in a Pep Guardiola Manchester City team, he had to learn to press, carry the ball 60 yards, score from outside the box, make overlapping runs off of his wingers and fullbacks, and play numerous midfield roles depending on what Pep needed that week. Jude Bellingham at Real Madrid is the most extreme version of this archetype right now. Bellingham crashes the box to score tap-ins, plays as a 10, plays as an 8, and tracks back to win the ball in his own box. He is doing 5 jobs at once. Bruno Fernandes at Manchester United, Federico Valverde at Real Madrid, Pedri at Barcelona, Declan Rice at Arsenal. These are the players that elite teams now build around. And what they all have in common is that they would have been considered too physical and too defensive-minded to be number 10s 20 years ago, and now they are doing more than the number 10s ever did. Now, you might be watching this and thinking, okay, but surely the number 10 will make a comeback at some point. Football is cyclical, tactics evolve, someone will figure out how to use a pure creator again. And I would love to tell you that's true, but I don't think it is, and here's why. The number 10 didn't just die because of tactics, it died because of athleticism and data. The modern footballer is bigger, faster and stronger than at any point in history. Players run more sprints per game than they did even 10 years ago. The average top-flight midfielder now covers somewhere between 11 and 13 kilometres a match. Riquelme in his prime covered about 6 to 7. A creator who can't run that distance is just a passenger, and no top coach is willing to carry a passenger anymore. And on the data side, every single team in the top 5 leagues now has an analytics department that measures pressing intensity, expected possession value, defensive duels won per minute, progressive passes per carry. Every metric you can think of is being tracked. And a player who only contributes when his team has the ball gets exposed by the data instantly. Because the second you don't have the ball, that player becomes a hole in your shape, and modern coaches will not tolerate a hole in their shape. And on top of all that, there's the academy pipeline. Academies don't develop traditional 10s anymore. I want you to think about this for a second. When was the last time a major academy produced a pure number 10 in the Riquelme mould? Not a creative midfielder, not an attacking 8, not a deep-lying playmaker, but an actual stand in the hole, get the ball, turn and play type 10. It has been over a decade because academies have already adjusted. Every academy in Europe is now developing inverted wingers, false 9s and box-to-box midfielders because that's what the senior teams want, which means there is no pipeline of young 10s coming through. Which means even if a coach wanted to play a number 10, there's nobody to play there. And the few academy kids who do come through with a number 10 profile get retrained into something else by the time they hit the senior squad. They get told to add a defensive game or move out wide or drop deeper and become an 8. The position has been bred out of the sport at the developmental level, which is the most permanent way to kill a position. You don't just kill it on the pitch, you kill it in the schools that produce the players. And the last guy, the absolute last great number 10 in world football was Mesut Ozil. And the way Ozil's career ended is honestly the perfect tragic ending for the position itself. Ozil at his peak was the most artistic creator in the Premier League. He was at one point the most expensive German player in history. He won the World Cup with Germany in 2014. He provided more chances created in a single Premier League season than any player before him. And within 5 years, he was being benched at Arsenal because he wouldn't press, because he wouldn't track back, because he wouldn't keep up with the physical demands of the modern game. And Arsenal eventually paid him to leave, and he ended up in Turkey and then quietly retired, barely making a sound. And that was it. That was the last time a top club in Europe trusted a pure number 10 with the keys to the team. And it didn't work, and after that experiment failed, nobody else has been brave enough or stupid enough to try it again. You can argue that James Rodriguez was the next attempt and his career fell off a cliff after Madrid. You can argue that Coutinho was the next attempt and his Barcelona move basically ended his elite career. You can argue that Kai Havertz was supposed to be the next 10 at Chelsea and Arsenal, and they ended up converting him to a striker because he couldn't function as a pure 10. Now look at the Phil Foden conundrum at Man City and for England, which Cole Palmer is beginning to struggle with too. Every single time a top club has tried to build around a 10 in the last decade, it has failed. And you can argue that Messi is still doing it at Inter Miami, but Messi is Messi. He is a generational outlier playing in a league that is not the same level. He is the exception that proves the rule. And when Messi finally retires, which will probably be in the next year or two, the position as we knew it previously will be officially extinct at the highest level of the sport. So that's the story of how the most romantic position in football quietly went extinct. It didn't die in one moment, it didn't die because of one coach, it died because the entire sport got faster, smarter, and more physically demanding, and the number 10 just couldn't keep up. The irony is that almost everything the number 10 used to do is still happening on the pitch every game, every weekend. The killer through ball is still being played. The deep creative passing range is still valuable and prominent. The dropped shoulder and turn is still beating defenders. It's just that now those things are being done by inverted wingers, false 9s and box-to-box midfielders who can also run 12 kilometers a game, press the opposition for 90 minutes, drift wide and take their man on, make runs off the ball, and contribute defensively. The soul of the number 10 is still there, but the position itself is gone, and probably forever.